So I guess I'm kind of doing a devlog series now about learning game development in Unity, and in this video I'm going to show you how I've polished up my game, added some fun stuff, learnt some cool new things, and finally published it somewhere for everyone to play for free. But before we do that, let's have a quick recap. In the last video I showed how I learnt the basics of Unity by doing a bunch of tutorials which included creating an Angry Birds clone and a 2D platformer. After that I used what I'd learnt to build a stickman and created a mini Avoid the Boulders game which is super fun and got me hooked on making video games. I went on to develop this into a neat little meteor escape game where the player has to dodge a load of randomly generated meteors for as long as possible. It's super simple and fun to play, perfect for my first attempt at a video game. So if you missed that video you can check it out by clicking the link in the top right of the screen. Now you're up to date, let me tell you about my month. Okay, so this is what the game looked like at the end of my first month learning game development, and at this point I didn't really want to change anything fundamental about the gameplay, but I did have a few ideas of how I can make it look and feel a bit better and make it feel a bit more fun to play, I guess. So let's just start going through what I've been adding. So first up, I decided that I wanted to add a bit more variation to the game, and I thought one of the best ways I could do this and one of the easiest ways I could do this was to simply make a few extra meteors of different sizes which would be spawned over the player. So in order to do this I just simply cloned my original meteor and made a few extra prefabs, changed the sizes, and then this allowed me to add all three meteors into a collection. And then I just randomly select one of the meteors each time I need one to be spawned over the player, and that gives the effect that they're all sort of random sizes. I think 3 sizes is enough, I think that's okay. So this sort of adds a little bit of depth to the game. It's nothing major, but I think it's a start. Since I started game development and since I started this game, I've been really looking forward to adding the sound effects to it, but it was never that high on the list. I just wanted to basically get something that somebody else could play or that I could play and have fun with. But now it was time to set up my mic and start recording so I can add some sound effects to the game. So after a few short takes I had sounds for jumping, sounds for explosions, sounds for player deaths, and some menu sounds. I edited these recordings in an audio editor, a free audio editor actually, called Audacity, and then dropped them into Unity. For the jumping sounds, I added them all into, there was about 7 of them, so I added them into a collection and then just sort of looped through the collection playing a different sound every time the space bar is pressed, which is the button for the jumping. This means you get a different jump each time. For the death sounds I wanted to do something a bit different, so I nabbed the code I wrote to randomize the meteors and basically applied the same thing to the death sounds. So adding them all into a collection and then selecting one at random when the player is hit by a meteor plays a different sound each time. And finally, for the menu sounds, I added 3 random pops on the hover event of the buttons, which means you get this funky little jive. I could do that all day. Maybe I should just make a whole game where you just make lots of popping and everyone's happy and that's it. So with the sound effects added, I think it's really starting to feel like a nice little mini game, and working on the sounds, recording them and adding them into Unity has definitely been one of my favourite parts so far. Okay, so now it's time to talk about adding music, and I was thinking that since adding sound effects had been such good fun, that music was also going to be equally as fun. But I was wrong. I did some research on how to create my own music, and there were loads of people online recommending this piece of freeware that you can download called Bosker Seal, and this is a nice little application that allows you to compose your own music in a kind of chiptune, old school video game style. All you need to do is pick a few funky sounds, click on a few notes, layer a few different tracks over each other, and then bring them all in at different times to create your tunes. So I started off pretty well, and I made this funky little tune. But after a while, I got totally overwhelmed by all the different sounds you can use and all the different notes you can play, and decided that on top of learning Unity and C# and Visual Studio and Photoshop and video editing and YouTube, that it was just going to be way too much for me to learn. I'll cross the music bridge another time. Watching things happen in slow motion to me is like watching another world, and I could watch that stuff all day. And there are plenty of YouTube channels dedicated to watching stuff happen in slow motion. So I thought it would be really cool if I sort of incorporated slow motion into my game. I followed another tutorial, always with the tutorials, which basically taught me how to create a time manager object within Unity. And then within this object, I built a function to slow down time and another function to speed it back up after a certain period of time. Now, following a tutorial is great and everything, and it tells you exactly what to do, but if you don't fully understand the concept or the concepts it makes, it can become very difficult to fix any unexpected issues that might happen. And this is exactly what happened to me. So, at first, it seemed like everything was working, but then I came across two major issues. The first was when time slowed down and then sped back up, the meteors wouldn't speed back up too. And whilst this looked quite cool, I think it was a bit of a game breaker in that there are no meteors for a while, and then all of a sudden there are a whole heap of meteors that become completely unavoidable. So I need to fix that. The second issue was when the level loaded back up again, the little stick man would be in a constant state of wiggle. And whilst this was actually quite funny, it was also a game breaker, so something I need to fix. So after literally hours and hours and hours searching online and messing around with time and forces, I finally managed to fix both these issues, but I don't really understand exactly how I've managed to fix them. For the slow meteors, I ended up changing the constant force applied to the meteors when they're spawned to an impulse, and then played around with the amount of force applied, and for some reason they now return back to normal. Again, I have no idea why. And for the wiggle, I decided to take a long shot and just try and make sure time was completely reset when the level reloaded, and by a stroke of luck that worked. Why? I have no idea. So this has been a running sentiment for me whilst learning game development. Most of the time I don't know why stuff is broken, and equally when it's fixed I don't know why stuff is working. But hey, I guess this just comes with learning new stuff. Anyway, here's the slow motion completed. At the moment, the player can only be controlled with the A and D keys and the spacebar as well for jump, but obviously this won't work if I publish my game to mobile devices. So I designed some quick buttons in Photoshop and added them into the UI within Unity, and then I managed to add some quick code to handle player movement if the buttons are pressed. This code basically handles whether you're playing the game on an Android device or on Windows. All I needed to do now was give it a good old test on an Android device, and Unity has a great little app available on the Play Store. I assume there's one for iOS as well, but I haven't checked that. I probably should at some point. But basically this app allows you to play test your game on a mobile device. Anyway, I downloaded it to my super old Android tablet, hooked it up, and nothing happened. In classic Unity fashion, this took me hours and hours to Google and work out. And what the issue was, I'm still not sure, but basically I had to tweak a few settings, launch the app, connect the device, load up Unity, rub a magic lamp, and then finally ask a genie to load up my game. Okay, so at this point I'd had a few annoying issues, one with the slow motion and one with the Android testing, which had taken me hours and hours and hours to sort of resolve. And I'd lost a bit of the fun. I'd lost most of the fun, to be honest, of game development, and I was sort of keen to get back into it. So I decided that the best way to do this was just to have a little play, have a little mess around with some settings, and just try and get some fun and funny stuff happening. So I made the stickman's head grow when he gets hit. I made the stickman explode. I made a zoom function when he gets hit, which was really cool, worked really well with the slow motion. I made a massive stickman, which was lots of fun. And basically it was just great fun messing around and seeing what I could do. I thought the exploding body parts and the zoom function were pretty cool, so I decided to keep them in the game, so it wasn't a complete waste of time. I'd had lots of fun and I got 2 great additions to my game. Okay, so we're getting close to publishing the game now, and I'm pretty happy with the sort of gameplay and the features that I've added this month. But I think one of the last things I need to do is just improve the stickman. I think he's just a bit square and he doesn't sort of react correctly, and you can sort of see gaps in between his limbs and his body parts. So I loaded up Photoshop, redesigned him with some nice curves and basically overlapped his body parts so you didn't get the gap anymore. Loaded him into Unity and then spent ages trying to get the same functionality back, but managed to do it in the end. And now I have Stickman version 2. Check this out.
Hey, hey, woo, woo, yeah.
Okay, so the final thing I have to do now before I work out how I'm going to publish this thing is give it some kind of name. I'm a big fan of really short, concise and straight to the point names, so I've decided to go for Unnamed Stickman Meteor Escape Game in 2D. Yeah. Now it's finally time for the moment that probably no one has been waiting for. I have now published my first game. I decided the best place for it right now is a website called itch.io, and you can find it by going to that website and go up to the search bar and search for Chrissy T. I'll put a link in the description of this video as well, so you can find it that way. It's probably easier. You don't need to install anything, you can just play it right there in the browser and it is completely free. So go and have a play and let me know what you think. Be gentle, be kind. It is my first game after all. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, click the like button, and if you're interested in seeing what my next project is going to be, then consider subscribing. Okay, time for a new project, I think. See ya.